So this video is a reminder of multiplying fractions, and I started off in class by talking about a certain math teacher buying half a cake and eating 2/3 of the half. So the question was how much of a whole cake he'd eaten. So when you see the word of in a fraction, it usually means you have to multiply. So 2/3 of half of a cake is the same as 2/3 times a half of a cake. And 2/3 times a half, well, you just do top times top, bottom times bottom. So 2 times 1 on the top and 3 times 2 on the bottom. Top times top, or numerator times numerator, bottom times bottom, or denominator times denominator. And when you did that, in this example, it came to 2/6. Now, 2/6 can be simplified because you can divide top and bottom by 2, so divide by 2/2 in other words. So that's the same as 1/3. So we did some questions in class. If you like, you can pause the screen, have a go at them, and then see how you do. So question 1 was 1/3 times 7/8. So I just made that top times top, bottom times bottom. 1 times 7 over 3 times 8. So that gives 7/24. That doesn't simplify. 7's a prime number. So that's as far as you can go with that. Number 2, 3/4 of 7/11. So as I said, when you see the of, it means times. So that's the same as saying 3/4 times 7/11. Then we just do top times top, 3 times 7, bottom times bottom, 4 times 11, and that gives you 21/44, which can't simplify because 21 and 44 don't have any common factors. Next one, slightly neater, 2/5 times 7/8. So that's 2 times 7 over 5 times 8, which is 14/40. And 14 and 40 can both be divided by 2. So I divide by 2/2 to simplify that to 7/20. Question 4, 5/6 of 14/15. Well, again, of means times, so that's 5/6 times 14/15. So you do top times top, 5 times 14 over bottom times bottom, 6 times 15, and you get 70/90. That can be simplified because you can divide top and bottom by 10. So you're dividing by 10/10 to get 7/9. Okay, and then finally we've got a mixed number, 2.5 times 3.1/3. Now there is a classic mistake that people make with these, and that is to say that it's the 2 times 3 is 6, and the half times 1/3 is 1/6, so it's 6.1/6. But that is not correct. And that's how I look if you make that mistake. So to try and illustrate why that's not correct, I've done a little rectangle there. And the height of the rectangle is 2.5. The width of the rectangle is 3.1/3. So if you do 2.5 times 3.1/3, you should get the area of that rectangle. Now, if you just do 2 times 3, you get that bit that I've shaded in yellow there. There's 2, there's 3, so 2 times 3 is just that yellow bit. If you do 1/2 times 1/3, you're just doing that bit times that bit, so you're getting that yellow bit. So just by doing 2 times 3 is 6, and 1/2 times 1/3 is a 1/6, you're only getting the bits that I've shaded in yellow there. So that's clearly not the area of the whole rectangle. So there's me just writing that for confirmation. 2 times 3 is 6. Half times a third is a sixth. So 6 and a sixth is the bit I shaded in yellow, but it's not the whole rectangle. So it's not 2.5 times 3 and a third. So what you need to do for these, you need to make both the fractions top heavy first. We are going to need to make both fractions top heavy. So we'll just do this the way I'd set it out. So you've got 2.5 times 3 and a third. I want to make that top heavy. So I want 2.5 to be a big fraction out of 2, and I want 3 and a third to be a big fraction out of 3. So the way I do that is to say 2 times 2 is 4, plus the extra 1 makes 5, and 3 times 3 is 9, plus the extra 1 makes 10. So just to recap on that, 2.5 is 5 halves, because you're doing 2 times 2 plus the extra 1 to get 5, and 3 and a third is 10 thirds, because you're doing 3 times 3 is 9 plus the extra 1 to make 10. So that's written as top heavy fractions, and then I've just got a little note reminding you of that. 2 times 2 plus the odd 1, 3 times 3 plus the odd 1 makes 5 over 2 times 10 over 3. Now that we've got that as two top heavy fractions, we can just do what we did before. Top times top, bottom times bottom, and that gives you 50 over 6. I can simplify that a bit because they both divide by 2, so that's the same as 25 over 3 when I divide by 2 over 2. And now I'd quite like to write that as a mixed number. So 25 over 3. 3 goes into 25 8 times to make 24. And then there's 1 left over to make 25, so it's 8 and a third. Next example. 2 3/4 times 6 2/5. So just make that top heavy. 2 3/4 is the same as 11 over 4, because you do 2 times 4 is 8, plus the extra 3 makes 11. And then 6 2/5 is the same as 32/5, because you do 6 times 5 is 30, plus the extra 2 makes 32. Top times top, and there's that again. Top times top, bottom times bottom gives you 352 over 20. And then 20 goes into 352 17 times, with 12 left over. So that's 17 and 12 over 20. 12 over 20 I can simplify by dividing by 4 over 4. So that's the same as 17 3/5. So here's some questions which we did in class. You can pause the screen and have a go at these. So 4 2/3 times 6 1/2. Writing that as top heavy, that's 14 over 3 times 13 over 2. This was done by a student in class, so that's not my writing. But 4 times 3 is 12, plus the extra 2 makes 14. And then 6 times 2 is 12, plus the extra 1 makes 13. So that's 14 thirds minus 13 over 2. So 14 times 13 over 3 times 2 gives you 182 over 6. 6 goes into 180 30 times, with 2 left over. So that's the same as 30 and 2 over 6, which you can simplify to 30 and a third by dividing by 2 over 2. Next one. 3 1/3 times 11 and 4/5. So I want to make that top heavy. Again, not done by me, but done in class by a pupil, a student, I should say. So 3 times 3 is 9, plus the extra 1 makes 10, so that's 10 over 3. And then 5 times 11 is 55, plus the extra 4 makes 59. So that's 59 over 5, that's supposed to say. Top times top, bottom times bottom. For some reason they've switched the 5 and the 3, but 5 times 3, 3 times 5, same. Comes to 590 over 15, which simplifies to 39 and 5/15, which is the same as 39 and 1/3. Number 3, 5 and 2/7 times 9 and 3/4. So 5 times 7 makes 35, plus the extra 2 makes 37. So that's 37 over 7 as a top heavy. 9 times 4 makes 36, plus the extra 3 makes 39. So that's 39 over 4 as a top heavy. Top times top, bottom times bottom gives us 1,443 over 28, which is 51 and 15/28. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do I know that 28 goes into 1,443 28 times? So what you can do, to cheat a little bit, it's not cheating, but it's how to figure this out. 1,443 divided by 28 gives me 51 point something. So for that reason, I know that 28 goes into 1,443 51 times with a bit left over. So I know the big number's 51 just from doing that. I know it's 51 and a bit. Now, if I do the 51 times 28, I only get 1,428. But I've actually got 1,443 here, so that's how I know that I've got 15 left over. So 51 and 15 over 28. Question 4. 2½ times 2½ is 5 halves times 5 halves, which is 25 over 4. 4 goes into 25 6 times to make 24, with 1 left over, so it's 6 1/4. And then this is the one that I said was a tricky question, 8 3/4 times 3. So the reason that's different is because that's just a 3 and not 3 and a number. So what do you do with that? Well, what I've done with it is to write the 3 as 3 over 1. So 8 3/4, 8 times 4 is 32, plus the extra 3 makes 35. So that's the same as 35 over 4. So we've got 35 over 4 times 3 over 1. Then it just looks like any of the other questions we've done. Top times top, bottom times bottom. 4 goes into 105, 26 times with 1 left over, so it's 26 1/4.